Hello everyone, Rabbi Jacobson here. Another episode of Meaningful Live. Sundays, 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And we're doing now a Bible series. The best-selling book of all time, deriving lessons from the narratives, characters, and personalities of the Bible, applying it to our personal, psychological, and emotional and spiritual lives. So today's topic is balancing individuality and community. The program is dedicated blessings for good health, peace, and success for Arad ben Tamar, Eyal ben Yafa, and Ramor bat Yudit. And maybe another more provocative way of titling this subject would be, does religion demand conformity? You see, one of the big challenges in life, and especially when it comes to religion, is it seems to demand conformity, maybe for good reason, for the communal value, for the higher good. But individuality, many feel, and perhaps correctly so, individuality has been compromised. It was one of the big complaints against religion in general and authority in general. Now it's interesting, I remember when the millennium turned, the new millennium, year 2000, 22 years ago. So it was one of the major magazines, the country ran a special issue called the Me Millennium. They call the second millennium, meaning from the year 1000 to 2000, the Me Millennium. And they pointed out, interestingly, that it's in this millennium where the me was born, the individual. That in every sector of life, individuality was not something even seen as a value. People lived together in collectives. There was no personal and rights, civil rights, individual rights. This was all a creation of the second millennium, the me millennium. Now, of course, in many ways, it went overboard to the other extreme. Me. So it is a great challenge. Can you bring together these two forces? On one hand, we all have self-interest, to the point that today we talk about the selfish gene, survival of the fittest. And yet, for us to be able to coexist, we must have cooperation. And what happens when there's a conflict between the communal good and your individual rights? You see this in this country constantly battling freedom of speech. I want to read whatever I want to read, or write or speak whatever I want to speak. I may offend somebody. It's my freedom of speech. I remember when the Nazi party marched on Skokie, Illinois, which was a very Jewish area. So from the point of view of freedom of assembly, everyone can march, as long as they're not violent or harmful to anyone. But speech is speech, even if it's speech that is hate speech. So of course there's a thin line. How do we know when hate speech spills over and becomes something that can be violent, a call to violence? The debate has been raging on, especially in this country where we have, in the Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights, individual rights. And individuality today is, I would even say, worshipped. And sometimes at the expense of the community. Think of a family unit. In a family, you have different people, have different interests, have different personalities, different dispositions. So how can a family be together and work together when so many different parts can even conflict with each other? So this is a topic that has addressed issues from a political perspective, economic perspective, philosophical perspective, psychological one. Wherever you turn, this is an issue. It goes back to Aristotle. The very idea of government. We have in the United States, e pluribus unum, from the many one, United States. But each state has a certain amount of autonomy. What happens if the states conflict? The Civil War. And yet this country has been held together. So it's quite brilliant how the Founding Fathers created a system. Even the very two houses of Congress. One is represented by population. For every million people, another senator. Another representative. But then every state has two senators. So you have the House of Representatives and the Senate. This was based on an argument Which way do we go? If I'm a state, just because we're a state with a smaller population, but we're still a complete state. On the other hand, the larger states argued, we have more people. So they created the two houses. All part of this issue of balancing individual and community. Nobody has figured out a formula of how it works. But I'd like to submit that we don't need to go create one. It's right there in front of us, in front of your very eyes. As a matter of fact, your very body, your very being, and nature itself is the epitome, the personification of harmony within diversity, which is a term I like to use, a Kabbalistic concept called Tiferes. So there's Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes. Chesed is love. Gvura is discipline. If Chesed is like the gas, Gvura is like the brakes. It's seasoning, channeling, harnessing, disciplining. And Tiferes is the fusion of the two. And Tiferes has that combination of harmony within diversity. Wherever you look in nature, we'll get to the human beings and our choices soon, you see this in the most fascinating way. Look at your human body, a healthy human body. We have between 35 and 75 trillion cells. Cells. And yet in a healthy body, they work together. We have millions, thousands, hundreds of systems. You have the heart, you have the brain, you have the liver, you have the lungs. Just to mention a few. Just take a piece of food in your mouth. How many things need to be coordinated? If someone didn't know what a human being looked like and you just saw human body parts, God forbid, you'd never imagine they could all work together. How do we have this both individual? The mind is not the heart is not the liver, and the liver is not the lungs. And yet they work together in complete synchronicity and harmony. As if there's an invisible conductor of the symphony. Different musicians, different instruments, different musical notes, but they all come together in a beautiful harmony. Look at nature. How many different organisms are there? How many different species? Multitudes. There are many we haven't even discovered. And look how it all works together. And even when there's a disruption, there's a forest fire, or there's an earthquake under the water, it's all part of a symbiotic relationship. Everything, the food chain, all balanced. The creatures or the organisms that are most consumed multiply in larger numbers. There are many more plants than there are animals. There are many more prey than there are predators. Keeps the balance. And if the predators are eliminated and the prey multiply, they become destructive. Different experiments in Yellowstone Park and other places. It's only the human that can disrupt this harmony. Because we can come in and we don't necessarily follow any guidelines. Nature is like a clock. It works in this symbiotic, in this balanced way. Human beings can suddenly come, think of musical notes that have their own free will, and they decide we don't want to work together. But nature, our very human body, from my flesh I behold the divine, gives us the best example. Remember, all technology at the end of the day is copying nature. All art is copying reality. A camera mimicking a human eye, an airplane mimicking a bird. So what better a teacher, an educator, is than nature itself and our bodies? So how does it work? How is that possible? On one hand, tremendous diversity. It's not like everything is one. And they need to work differently. If the lungs function like the heart, we would have a destruction. And yet they also coordinate with each other. Because using the language of the mystics is because there's a third invisible power. We call it the synergetic force. That combines two, that's beyond the diversity and beyond the unity. You see, unity can be seen as one and not many. But there's a deeper form of unity, harmony within diversity. One color blue, one color red, could be a beautiful color, could be your favorite color, but you don't call that beauty. You say a beautiful face, it's not just eyes, a nose, a mouth. People wonder, what defines beauty? And no one has really put their finger on it. It's the harmony of that within diversity. It's not just the cheekbones, it's not just the nose, the eyes, the forehead, the complexion. Some type of combination comes together in an elegant and pleasant way, and we call that beauty. It's the harmony of many details that we call beauty. You never call one element beautiful. One musical note, you continue playing it, it's monotony, becomes noise. It's many different notes. And if they're in the wrong order, it creates chaos and confusion. But when it's in the right order, it creates the beauty, the harmony within diversity. Because there's a third dimension. Now, the only ones that are given the free will to choose is us. We too are diverse. In the words of the Talmud, no two people have the same type of personality or the same way of thinking. There may be similarities, but everyone's unique and different. And yet we're expected and we're asked to come together in the symphony. Not to compromise the self, but like it is in nature. Be completely you, but at the same time, you know you're part of a larger entity. The words of Hillel capture it better than any other expression. If I'm not for myself, who will be for me? Individuality. You need to understand yourself. You have to take care of your needs. But then the second half of the statement, if I'm only for myself, what am I? That balance. So in other words, individuality can spill over into selfishness, into greed, into narcissism. On the other hand, to become a doormat and lose your individuality is also not the goal. To just become a conformist, a follower, a pleaser. That's not. We want you to be an individual. You need to be the heart, the mind, that uniqueness that you have, your song, but at the same time learn that you need everyone else's song to complement yours. And they need you to complement you, to complement them. Now, it sounds nice and poetic. Is it doable? Absolutely. When we introduce one concept, a word I've mentioned a number of times, called bittul. Bittul means a combination of humility, modesty, suspension of self. It really means devotion and commitment and dedication to something greater than yourself. And here's the interesting twist. Your individuality is not because you're arrogant and think you're great and you have a big ego. Your individuality is necessary for the bigger picture. So you have to be an individual not because you want to be one, but because you need to be one. That's very different. When a person says, hey, I'm an individual, don't tell me what to do, that often is really a voice of defiance, either because they were pressured or imposed upon or some other way forced to do things. So sometimes the only way we break away, growing up in a very oppressive home or school, I'm going to be an individual. I'm not going to be the man in the gray flannel suit, another conformist, herd mentality. So it's really coming as a protest. But there's another form of individuality, which comes together with humility. I need to be an individual because you were created to be one. God says, I want you to be you, not him or not her. So if the individuality is not coming, fighting for your turf, or from insecurity, or from, which often arrogance, like one guy once told me about someone, he hides his ignorance with his arrogance. Another way of saying it is he hides his insecurity with his arrogance. So individuality can come from a healthy place and can come from an unhealthy place. It should be coming from the fact that you need to be you, because we cannot have a complete world. We cannot be complete if you're not you. If I'm not for myself, who will be for me? But at the same time comes the second half, because it's also coming from humility. If I'm only for myself, what am I? That's why the musical notes work together. Nature is a symbiotic harmony within diversity. The human body, in that same form of synchronicity, all due to the fact that both the individuality and the communal, meaning the cooperation, comes from the same place. Not self-preservation, not survival of the fittest, but because it's necessary. The community needs the individual needs the community. It's like synergy. I'll use an example as a writer. You write words. Words become sentences. They become paragraphs. Paragraphs become chapters. Chapters become books. They tell a narrative. How do you do that? You have to have many details, but they all work in a synchronized way, same as when we speak. A good speaker, a good communicator is taking many different ideas, many different expressions, phrases, and putting them together like a work of art. Same thing with an artist, same thing with a musician, same thing with an architect. They're all coming from one driving force. It's not about me. It's about what is necessary, and the individual is necessary, and the synergy is necessary. So take a word. Take the word called, let's say use a very beautiful word. The word blessing. Everybody loves blessing. Bless. Consists of B-L-E-S-S. B is an individual letter, L is an individual letter, E, and a double S. Separately, they're letters in the alphabet. They can be used in other words. And they are used in other words. But when they come together in this word called bless, they're more than the sum of the parts. They give a message of blessing. I want to bless you. I want to thank you. I want to show gratitude. So what do we have here? On one hand, if you take away the letters, the B, the L, if the B won't be a B and the L won't be an E, L, and the E won't be an E, you're not going to have a word. On the other hand, it's only when they come together in that combination that they give us that synergetic message called blessing. So is it individual or communal? The answer is both. The individuality creates the synergy that ends up creating something more than the sum of the parts. So in essence, we're really, for success, we really need both elements. Think of a tree. Is a tree spreading its wings in its individual way, or is a tree a rigid, firm entity? Think about it. Both. If you're talking about the roots and the trunk, they have to be firmly grounded. And because they are, then it allows the branches to spread out. A bird that doesn't have a nest to nurture it will have very difficulty learning how to fly. So before we soar on the wings of our individuality, we also need the security of knowing that something is secure, something is steady. You know, many times in relationships, you ask yourself, who do you prefer having? A guy or a woman that is a free spirit, spontaneous, adventurous, exciting, but there's something that comes with that. They're often unpredictable in a good way, but they can also be unpredictable in a bad way. They don't come on time, not always living up to a deadline. They're not consistent. Can you build security around that? And then you have the other type. A person who's always on time. You can completely rely on them, but they can turn very boring. How many times have I heard in marital counseling, I love my husband, he's very good, but he's like a clerk, like a clock. There's no spontaneity, there's no excitement. Can you have the best of both worlds? The answer is absolutely yes. By understanding that individuality is required, the uniqueness, at the same time, you also need to have that cooperation with others, the harmony within diversity. And the key is to think not about yourself, but about the good. The greater good demands not conformity and compromising self, it demands your unique self. And this is the great tragedy that religion has suffered from. Well, I would say false religion, that it demanded conformity and forgot about individuality. Prayer and other forms of religious rituals are all meant to be a way to express yourself, your unique self. The fact that we may say the same prayers, that creates a synergy. But that's like singing a song together. But each of us should be singing it in our own unique way. Yes, there are only that many musical notes on the scale. You can't add a new musical note. Is that conformity? No. Because you can combine them anyway. You can create you can do a presentation of the same song, a rendition of the same song in a completely way. One is dead and one sounds alive. So you can add your uniqueness into the very same song even. And you have both qualities. Something in common and something that is also unique. But for this to work, arrogance and ego, and definitely self-preservation and security that comes in an insecure world are not going to be healthy driving forces. Sometimes some people, like one person told me recently, 25 years of my life, I was doing what other people want. Now I want to do what I want. And they went to the other extreme. They don't care. They have a damn about anyone else. And I said, so that's the solution? Yeah, I need 25 years of being me. Then I'll figure out a way to bring them together. Now, I understand where the person's coming from. When you're in prison for 25 years, you just want to break free. But you don't want to respond to unhealthy things in an unhealthy way. You want to find a combination of the two. And I want to conclude with a beautiful line from the Kotzker Rebbe, Rabbi Nachum Mendel of Kotzk. And he put it this way. It's beautiful, especially in relationships. Because relationships is where you see this most. You have a couple, and they're different. How do they work together? How can they have love and at the same time be individuals? How do you have boundaries and space and at the same time have something in common? So often you have is one is passive and one is more aggressive, one is dominant, one is passive. Is that the answer? Can both have their form of expression and still find that synergy? So the Kotzker Rebbe puts it this way. If I am I, because you are you, and you are you because I am not and you are not. But if I am I because I am I, and you are you because you are you, I am and you are. Think about that. In other words, if your identity is defined by juxtaposition to another, like, I don't know who I am, the only way I know who I am is by looking at another. And that person is doing the same, the blind leading the blind, each of us will never be. But if I am I generated from within myself, and you are you generated from within yourself, two secure individuals who understand their own soul, their own uniqueness, their own song, then we come together. I am I, you are you, and you have harmony within diversity. You have individuals, but individuals who also have that humility, that bittul, to be able to rise above and experience something that is greater than the sum of the parts. That is a true relationship. Is it easy? No, it needs work. But you have to get yourself put aside. I know it sounds seemingly paradoxical. You're telling me to be an individual, but you tell me to put myself aside? Yes, be an individual because you need to be one, not because you want to be one. Be an individual because that is what's expected, because you were created as a unique person. You were born an original, don't become a copy. And then you can coexist with everyone. Look at people, the most secure people can deal with any person, even someone who completely disagrees with them. This has been Simon Jacobson, Meaningful Life, talking about balancing individuality and the community. I'd love to hear your feedback, thoughts, suggestions, comments, critique, and please share this. Please share this with others. Check us out at meaningfullife.com. We have a robust schedule of activities and events online, all kinds of topics for different types of audiences. And again, stay in touch. Thank you so much.